So welcome back to my channel. I am Rion, a former fundie, and this is my new series called Cult Dropout, where I share my feelings, my experiences, my musings about growing up in a high control group and what it's like deconstructing at this time in my life. I wanted to share with you the family dynamic of growing up inside of a family who is micromanaged at every move, at every level by the organization, which is Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, or as we call them, the governing body, just a bunch of older geriatric dudes who tell us how to live our lives, write a bunch of literature to indoctrinate people, and exploit kids and adults to build buildings for them so they can sell them, like build kingdom halls so they can sell them, or spend their time in frivolous field service knocking on doors trying to bring people to the truth or save them, when they could be using their time wisely and working in jobs that make them feel fulfilled, having relationships that make them feel loved and comfort. Yeah, but instead what they're left with is an organization that tells them who to be, how to be, where to be, when to be, 24/7, 365. So when it comes to the hierarchy, I guess you could say, of a JW family, of course the father is the head, and the mother would come second, and then the kids. And the kids are just down at the bottom. They don't really matter. What they say, what they think, what they feel is not important. And the dynamic of your parents, like, relationships should be equal. It's not a business. Your husband is not your boss. He is your partner, your co-pilot, your co-parent. You should be making decisions together. Absolutely, there might be one who's more apt at making decisions, maybe financial decisions versus decisions about the kids' schooling or things of that nature. But for the most part, you stand on equal footing, you respect each other, and at the end of the day, it doesn't come down to what the husband says. But that's not the case in JW relationships. The head of the household always makes all decisions. And what I mean is, like, yeah, I'm sure the wife makes decisions. I know in my family, my mom made decisions, but ultimately the head of the household has the final say, has the final call as to where the money gets spent, what their children can and cannot do. So there's no equal partnership. There's no mutual respect for each other. How can you have a respectful relationship when somebody else always calls the shots? When someone controls the narrative, tells you what to do? That feels more like you're at a job and your boss tells you how to do your job every day. And I'm an adult. We're adults. We've had babies. We don't need someone to boss us around and tell us what to do. It's infantilizing, very patronizing, misogynistic, but that's what you get. That's what you get involved with, the Jehovah's Witnesses belief system. That is how it's set up. You're not meant to have a voice. Women aren't meant to have power, any kind of control. And yesterday I said that I wanted to talk about the dynamic of Jehovah's Witness parents. And I mean in that order because when you are a Jehovah's Witness, what comes first is the organization. And you're thinking, well, shouldn't God come first? Well, yeah, they think they're putting God first. But these men have basically knocked out Jesus from his mediation position and taken that place. And they are now the mediators for God. So everything comes through them, like through God, through Jesus, through them to the people. And that is that hierarchy. And husbands, they see their wives and their children as property. So you can't have, how can you have a respectful relationship with anybody or anything that you see as property? Anyway, so what I was saying, Jehovah's Witness parents, they will put the organization first. So if your child is struggling, let's say, how about I use myself as an example? And this is not to, I'm not trying to talk shit about my parents. I'm not saying anything bad about them. I love them very much. Sadly, we don't have a relationship right now. I would love for that to change, but you know, what can I do? My issue is placing blame. I'm an adult at this point, and I'm kind of done with that. I've moved on, but I want to show you examples of what I mean. So JW parents, I got in trouble, or how about this? I was being a normal teenager, and I had a boyfriend, and I wanted to date that boyfriend, and I wanted to see that boyfriend. Now, I did have boyfriends from the Kingdom Hall before, and I use that term loosely because basically it's just somebody that you talk to. You don't do anything with them, but you know, you like them. Like that's what I mean by boyfriend. But anyway, I was doing things that teenagers do, and having sex, and I got caught. And instead of my parents having like that kind of conversation with me, maybe the birds and the bees, they just sent me off to the elders. They told on me, and they know what that means. Instead of keeping it private and in the family, now my business, my private life. I may have to continue this when I get home because I'm running out of space. I think where I left off is that as a child, you could be going through a very delicate time in your life, a very sticky situation, a private situation that the whole congregation does not need to be involved with. But you're looking at an instance where parents will value and choose listening to the watchtower and the governing body and reporting their children to the elders, writing them out. You know how tough and embarrassing it is to talk about masturbation and sex with your parents, let alone now you have to bring in elders from the congregation that you have to confess to and pour out all these dirty little secrets for something like masturbation or having sex. This is a private family matter, and you're being policed and told on by the people who you're supposed to be able to trust, and you can't confide in or trust in them when they will always choose being a Jehovah's Witness first over being a parent, the child that they birthed. And if your parents don't trust you, respect you, how do you think that makes a child feel and grow up holding on to, I don't know, bad feelings of just not being good enough, not being able to live up to their parents' expectations, the organization's expectations? If you were a child, would you feel comfortable speaking honestly and bluntly, frankly, with your parents if you know that they will turn on you, that they will question who you are as a person just because of some weird ass rule that the organization has made? Like, for instance, gambling, smoking, masturbation. No kid is going to feel comfortable expressing themselves in front of a bunch of guys that they've grown up looking up to, knowing they have to respect, knowing that they hold some kind of authority over them. you're not going to want to express yourself. And if you do, you will suffer the repercussions from doing so, from just being a teenager who maybe doesn't even make mistakes. I don't even want to call them mistakes, but have lessons to be learned. And the lessons aren't that serious that they should suffer some horrendous consequence like being disfellowshipped or being marked as bad association. The amount of pressure kids are under to be the perfect example of a happy family, regardless of what you're dealing with in school, in your life, at home. You always just have to be performing and acting like everything is okay. All right, guys, I'm back at home and I had to record here because I ran out of storage on my phone and I have to get ready to go to the gym. I just wanted to wrap up basically by saying as a kid, we're dealing with enough. We're dealing with kids at school being different, probably having people mock you, make fun of you. You already have to separate yourself from the class whenever there's any kind of special events, sit out in the hallways. You're isolated as heck as a JW kid from the world. All you have are the other kids who are exactly like you, trying to be perfect, trying to perform, trying to keep their parents happy so that way you don't make the entire family look like they're worldly or bad association. And then on top of that, you have those that you love, that you trust the most in the world, treating you as though you're some kind of criminal who needs to be reported anytime you slightly step outside of the typical guidelines for JW behavior. And you know, kids screw up. They mess up, man. That's what they do best. But learning from their mistakes is what makes them the individual that they are when they grow up. If I had been able to make mistakes and then learn from them instead of just being sheltered from everything in this world, maybe I would have made some better decisions as an adult. Instead, I was so sheltered and impulsive because unless the issue that I was facing could be directly correlated with the Bible, with some kind of scripture, I didn't know what kind of decision I should be making. Do you see how that causes a dilemma in children? Their critical thinking always ties back to what the organization wants, what the organization says. When you have some emotional difficulty, bumps in the road, you're stressed out enough as it is, going through growing spurts, growing pains, maybe you have acne or just starting to get hair. I mean, just all of the things that happen to you as a human, as a child. And now you're burdening kids with this aching for exceptionalism. This deep desire to be the example that Jesus was. When Jesus was allegedly a perfect person, it's not something that anybody can attain, especially not a kid. I couldn't attain it if I tried. And we're just throwing them into all this turmoil for what? For what? Self-policing your kids, making them go in front of the elders, sit in a room, confess your sins. Really gory, nasty details, y'all, about sex and touching yourself and do you like it? Things that we'll get to and talk about and discuss at some point. The point of this is that being a JW kid is lonely. It is a lonely existence. Being a JW is an isolated and lonely existence. And parents should be protecting their kids from the evil in this world. And instead they hand them over easily, readily, wantingly, because they want to perform, because they want to fulfill their duty, because they want to be looked at as one of Jehovah's representatives. And that means more, that facade means more than the relationship you have with your child. You're breaking bonds. Treating your kid like they're, what's that word? When they're not valued, not trash, dismissible. When you dismiss your kids, they're not going to trust you. They're not going to want to open up to you or come to you. You beat them down so much. JW parents will be so invasive in a kid's life. They'll read your diary. They'll listen to your phone calls. They'll read your text messages. I mean, they're in your head. Everything that you do. And I get being a parent is hard and this world is scary and there's lots of bad people out there and you have to educate your kid. And that's what you should do, is educate them. Not hover over them, not helicopter them. Allow them to make some decisions so they can get their footing. So they don't be like me and go out into the real world and like, I don't know what decisions I'm supposed to make. I don't know if this is a good situation. What does John 1 verses 17 say? It has nothing to do with the situation. But that is the gymnastics. That's the pretzeling and the contortioning, if you will, that we'll do as kids to fit in, to fit the mold, to make your parents love you. And that should just be something automatically given by a parent. Hey, my little chickadees. I apologize. I do not know where I left off. Since I last recorded, I've gone to the gym, I've gotten showered, and now here I am. And I want to talk more about JW parents. So I'm just going to pick off someplace and see what happens and where we go. One of the big things I wanted to talk about when it comes to JW parents is how the family dynamic is. I already told you about the hierarchy, but when it comes to the child and parent relationship, it's not just like the wife and husband relationship is more like a business ship because you have somebody at the top, somebody bossing you around. The child's relationship with the parent is more like a, what would you call that? What would be the word? You're vying for their attention. Oh man, you're being a child. I don't know what word I'm searching for, but you're being a child and you want the recognition of your parent. And you don't really have a way to prove yourself, to get that recognition, because the only thing you do with your life revolves around Jehovah's Witness stuff. So it's like a scoreboard of sorts. Like when you go to school and you get gold stars, a family system kind of operates the same way. If you as a kid, let's just say you're a teenager, you prepare before the studies. Whatever meeting you're going to, Sunday, Tuesday meeting, you're reading the literature, you're answering the questions, you're highlighting your magazine. That's like a big deal, to highlight the magazine to make it look as though you're prepared. 1 gold star for that. Another gold star if you answer at the meeting. Okay? Field service. Another gold star. Go out in field service, talk to people at the door. That's great. That's how you earn your position in the family of being a good kid. Truly. Not much else matters other than maybe like cleanliness and, not mouthing off to your parents. But this is the big heart, the meat of how a child develops and how they see themselves in the world and how they view their parents and the org. Place a magazine. That might even get you 2 gold stars. If you place a magazine or a book, a book's like 10 points. You don't even get a gold star. You just get 10 points, bonus points. But do you see what I mean? And similarly, that scoreboard also translate into the family dynamic of how you are viewed by the congregation. Because if little Timmy and little Janie are well behaved, you don't ever see them step out of line. They're always raising their hand at the meetings. You peeksies over at their watchtower or whatever, and you always see it underlined. So you know, or at least you think you know, that they've studied. Let me just tell you, a lot of us just underline stuff to make it look like we studied. Because there's a paragraph, for those those of you who are unaware, their literature that you go through every meeting, which is 2 times a week. There's paragraphs you read, and then there's questions. So they ask the questions, and then the audience answered. And it's like 5th grader level kind of things. So you performing all of these things makes your family look better in the hierarchy of the congregation. And as I said before, because you don't want to be marked as bad association, you'll stop getting invited to gatherings, and or they might not even want to work with you out in field service. You'll have some probably who will go the extra mile to probably be a little bit nosy, but will try to reel you back in and hound you to go out in field service or whatnot. And others who will just, you'll be like the plague. They don't want nothing to do with you because they think you might lead them astray. So everyone is operating on this transactional system. Like your love, your friendship, it's all conditional and transactional. You've got to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G to Z in order to get a pat on the back. We're not even talking about much reciprocation or awards or anything of that, or honor. But everybody wants to feel accomplished. Everybody wants to feel like they're doing something good. Everyone wants to feel good about themselves. And all the other things that kids would normally do to gain that confidence, like participating in sports, let's say, or other events in school, you miss out on that opportunity. So that scoreboard relating to Jehovah's Witnesses is the only way you build that confidence and you get those accolades. So that's where you focus your time and attention, not on to being a better person. I mean, you think you're being a better person because you're focusing on JW literature, but it does not make you a better person. It makes you a judgmental person. All of that being said, where I'm going with this is that your world is just a stage. You are simply performing for the congregation. You're vying for your position in the congregation. Everyone's performance in the family matters in your pole position, and you're vying for being like the chosen family, the quintessential Jehovah's Witness family, because there's always one. In every congregation, there's always one. And I think that's just humans being humans. There's probably churches that are filled with the same ideology and cliques, but it's toxic because Jehovah's Witnesses don't acknowledge, won't accept how toxic their behavior is. They can't see it, obviously. For instance, Jehovah's Witnesses, parents who put being a Jehovah's Witness first, for that appearance, for vying for their position in the congregation, they will allow their child to die for the non-blood issue. Jehovah's Witnesses are against blood transfusions. They can accept fractions if their conscience allows them. That's a whole thing that we could get into at another time if you were interested in what they do and don't allow. But they would happily, because it makes them look loyal as a JW to Jehovah, to Watchtower, to the governing body, in reality, will allow their child to die on an operating table because they won't allow them to get a blood transfusion and they will bleed out. They have watchtowers where they've included pictures, many pictures of children who've died, and they called them
faithful. They're martyrs in the name of the governing body. Because if you were, as a JW parent, boy, I'm just going to keep hounding that Jehovah's Witness, parent. If you would allow your child to receive a blood transfusion, you would likely be disfellowshipped. I would say with 100% certainty, you would be disfellowshipped, and you would be an anathema to the congregation. If you weren't disfellowshipped, they would see you as poison. But I highly doubt there would be people walking away from that situation, Jehovah's Witnesses allowing their child to receive a blood transfusion and not being disfellowshipped. I'm pretty certain that is what would happen. So you see that transactional, that conditional relationship only matters as much as it relates to what you are doing for Jehovah, for the governing body, for the elders, for Watchtower. It means nothing how much you love your mom, your dad, they love their kids. The wall between them will always be Watchtower. Watchtower's walls. Wow, man. Sometimes I get really philosophical, don't I? But it's true. They build walls between families. If you were to be disfellowshipped, there's a possibility you would never, ever talk to family and friends, certain family and friends, ever again, for no reason other than you wanted to save your child's life. So to avoid all that, Jehovah's Witnesses will allow their child to die so they can be a martyr, so they can, in all honesty, what I'm going to tell you is I think that in many ways, because of that martyr, that victim ideology, they also feel as they're heroic and they did something good for Jehovah, for Watchtower, for the organization. Because we stuck to Jehovah's principles and we didn't allow our child to take blood. Oh, it was really sad for us. Oh boy, our heart was broken. But we know we're going to see them again in the new system, in paradise. That's why we have to toe the line and do everything that Jehovah tells us to do. The governing body tells us to do. Does anybody see a plot hole here? All arrows lead to the organization. They disrupt every bit and piece of your life. They build a wall between your relationships with friends, your relationship with your family, your relationship with your business, your career, your hobbies, your entertainment. For goodness sake, Jehovah's Witnesses will go on vacation and still find a Kingdom Hall to go to on vacation, and a majority will also still go out in field service. Any time that I went on vacation with my parents as a child, we always found the local congregation and went on a Sunday, and we're going out in field service on a Saturday, because that's a great way to meet new people. Anyhow, back to the whole JW parents. I just want to impress upon you that it's difficult to have a genuine relationship with somebody who you can't be your full self. And I know that you know that. I'm certain that you know that. There's probably people out here who maybe even are just autistic and they have to mask who they are because they feel like they'll be looked at differently. So they just learn how to perform to some degree. And I hope that I'm not making a slight when I said that. And if I did, please correct me in the comments. But very similarly, we as Jehovah's Witnesses had to wear a mask, pretend to be something, even if we weren't. Some of them are. Some of them maybe be the JW through and through, like the blood runs blue for jw.org. But for many like me, that wasn't That wasn't the case. I never really quite felt comfortable. I never really felt like I fit in. I never really felt like I believed it, but it was all I knew. So the only thing I could do, because I was not allowed to question, that's a no-no, was put on that mask, put on that fake smile, pretend I like it, pretend I'm happy, and problem solved. Don't be a real human, just be a shell of a human. And that is your life in paradise. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship where my husband was the head of me. I've done that. Been there, done that. Will never do again. 0 out of 100. 0 out of 1,000. Would not, could not, should not, shan't not, shall not do. That is too businessy for me. I want to co-parent. I want to co-direct. I want to be entangled. I want that muffa intertwined with me. But really, and when it comes to my kids, I don't give nan they do when it comes to spirituality or whatever else, their job. I would never build a wall between me and my child. I love them. I would encourage them to do the best of their ability, which they do. And I wouldn't build those walls that the Jehovah's Witness Watchtower organization does to people. You're just a person in a square box. And they don't know that, right? Because from their perspective, that's their world and everybody else is in that box, so it seems normal. But we know it's not. We know we shouldn't treat our children like they're a piece of property, like they're some kind of pawn in a game, like they're a number on a scoreboard, so that way we can look like a certain part, play a certain part, just to be good with all your congregation. I wouldn't want to be with people who expected that of me. Don't you find that so incredibly weird? It just grosses me out. Like, I just remember those days. I remember that feeling, that feeling of having to act and behave and say things that I really didn't mean. And kids in those congregations, that is what is happening to them. They have to, when it comes to field service, they have to tell people that they enjoy it. Now, they might say, I don't like it, but it would be laughed about. Like, oh, he's just kidding. He loves talking about Jehovah. He loves knocking on the door. We let him ring the bell. Oh, wow, what fun. Let the kid play outside. Let the kid be a kid. Stop judging the kid based on his relationship, if there really was one, with JW, with the organization, the governing body. I find that very dismissive and reductive, because kids they're on their discovery. They're on a path of discovery. And do you see how that scoreboard leaves little for discovery? There's not much to reach for. There's not a goal in life. I didn't have big goals. I didn't intend to get pregnant. And that's a whole other story that we can talk about. But that kind of just changed my trajectory. But before that, I just kind of planned on doing an office job, waiting for the end of the world to come. I did. That's what I thought was going to happen. Here I am. Oh, shit. I forget what I was saying. Anyway, I think really at this point, I've made my point. I've driven it home. The Cult Dropout series, I just intend to talk more open and honestly. I felt very stuffed up and kind of like I've been keeping a lot of things inside because I just feel silly, because I realize that I am just, I'm going to rewind. I am a cult dropout, not just. I'm not going to deprecate myself. But I don't have this long education, read all these books and talked about philosophy and things. I haven't done it. I would love to. I'm hoping to get there eventually. But right now, what I have to offer is my experiences to help people see what organizations, what high control religions like this do to people, how they treat people, how they treat family, how it is just a Trump. Why is Trump texting me? Unbelievable. Thanks, Palantir. I'm done. I don't even know what I was saying, but I'm done. You get the drift. That's what the Cult Dropout series is about. Me to speak my truth, for other people to understand where I'm coming from, the dangers, and to hopefully build a community, find other people who have experiences similar to me. It might not even be in a high control religion. It might have been in a high control political group. It might be from an MLM. I have tons of people that I've met who come from MLMs. And let me tell you, they are very high control. And religions are much like MLM. JWs are an MLM. And that's a whole nother story that we could talk about another time. Please drop a comment. Let me know what high control group you hail from, or if you are atheist or whatnot. And how does this hit you? What do you think when you hear this? How would you feel growing up inside of a high pressure cult like that, where all you do is perform and your life revolves around this imaginary dude in the sky who never talks to you and wants your money and your labor, and it's never enough? I can tell you what, it did a world of damage to me, but I'm here, I'm finding my voice, and I'm glad you're coming along with me. My next video for the Cult Dropout series is going to be how I came from a far right, or maybe not far right, but a conservative political view, to now what I would call a radical left point of view. How my political views were shaped by the indoctrination from a young child, and how now I'm faced with a world that I was not prepared for, because all the problems, the issues that we have, I thought were going to be taken care of by God, by Jesus, when he brought Armageddon and just got rid of all the bad people. I mean, there's a lot of killing and blood and all that kind of thing first, as Armageddon does. But I wouldn't have to worry about them in this lifetime. So here I am realizing this country is going a direction that makes me very sad, considering that this is supposed to be the land of the free. So we'll get into that next time. So until next time, y'all take care of yourselves. Stay curious. I love you. Bye. Pickles ain't here to say goodbye. Okay, bye.